Hi guys, I'm Zizu Milana here, and today we've made another English storytelling. Yes, this is my first storytelling in 2026, a great World Cup year for English language version. And this year storytelling, I'm going to talk about history of Resident Evil after Shinji Mikami leaving Capcom from Resident Evil 5 to upcoming Requiem. Yeah, this is could be honored to Resident Evil Requiem, which is an upcoming game in 2026. So, what is Resident Evil? What is the release from the view perspective? So, I've accept for the spin-off like Revelations and the Chronicles franchise as well as the we also excluding the remakes that we have heard about the Shinji Mikami story on YouTube. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to your family and friends. So let's begin the video, guys. Before we talk about Resident Evil 5 to Requiem, let's talk about Resident Evil itself. Resident Evil is a survival horror franchise from Capcom and created by Shinji Mikami. And yeah, I had a video about that. So the franchise is better at video games and animated CGI film than in live action because live action film was bad because it's not connected to video games. But the like CGI films was heavily connected to video games. So yeah, I'll feature about Shinji Mikami for the first and for Resident Evil. So games that click here in the description below for the rising success about Shinji Mikami here. Resident Evil 5 development story began in 2004 or 2005, which 2005, the same year as Resident Evil 4 was released. The game will be released on PS3, Xbox 360, and PC, but they have a problem. The game have accused for racism, like Chris, who is a white American, with caused controversy in gaming. So what Capcom solution is to black female characters, Sheba Alomar, she worked with VSAA for Chris, and the game released on 5th of March 2009 in Japan as Biohazard 5, and a week later released on America and Europe. The game features include single player and co-op multiplayer, offline or online. The game received positive reviews, but despite the game that's departed from survival horror, the game was ranked best in 2000, PS3 in 2009. So yeah, despite racism, top Resident Evil, which includes Alomar, and also without Resident Evil 5, Last of Us never happens to release on PlayStation 3 forever. Resident Evil 6 development story began in July 2009, which months after the success of Resident Evil 5. So Capcom need the more action and genre which looks similar to the started on PlayStation as exclusive game at the time. Then in 2010, then developed into the action horror game, and the game released on 2nd of October 2012, and 2 days later released in Japan as Biohazard 6. The game, like Resident Evil 5, they have a separate campaign stories like Chris, Leon, Jake, and Ada. The game received mixed reviews, but iTunes scored them 7.9, which made Resident Evil also the part of survival horror. Despite of the worst mixed reviews, the game sells well in 2012, along with FIFA 13 and PES 2013. And yeah, even though the game was a departure of survival horror, the game, and forcing more action horror games, and when Capcom think twice about Resident Evil 6 was bestseller despite of being a mixed reviews game. Resident Evil 7's development story began in late 2012 and early 2013. So Capcom will make Resident Evil 7 as the return of the survival horror genre, which taking inspiration of 1987 film called The Evil Dead. The development used of 120 staff, and also Capcom was shifted from empty frameworks to RE Engine, which focusing on 8 of 9 generation console. The game is released on 24th of January 2017 on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC for worldwide markets. And in Japan, 2 days later, is Biohazard 7. And also, the character was into the game was Ethan Winters, also searching with Mia, and also that they will move to Baker House, and likely ended up to be be saved by Chris Redfield. Yes, you're not right. Chris Redfield is saving Ethan Winters. So the game it was only using the first person perspective that looks like Call of Duty and more intense for survival horror that makes better for first person than in third person, like in Resident Evil 6, which previously that Resident Evil 6 was a departure of survival horror, but Resident Evil 7 that saved Resident Evil forever, even including only first person perspective that Capcom ever used. That first person perspective game was even introduced in the 2017. 2017 game called Resident Evil 7, that Capcom will likely make Resident Evil 7 to be first person that's similar to Call of Duty, and also the character Ethan Winters will also never have a face itself because Capcom have removed Ethan's face. Instead, Capcom made Ethan to be first person like in Call of Duty game. Anyway, so the game received positive reviews, making Resident Evil 7 becoming bestseller of that year. So yeah, imagine Call of Duty meets survival horror, which making the returns of the roots of the make sense that when to play Resident Evil 7, that looks like Call of Duty in the survival horror genre though. Resident Evil development story began on August 2016, which made Capcom to prepare to release Resident Evil 7. So Resident Evil Village set in Romanian village that using combination between Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 7. So Capcom, after remaking the Resident Evil 2 as well as Resident Evil 3 remakes, Capcom will also announce to a Resident Evil game called The Village. So the game released on 7th of May 2021 on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series NXX, as well as PC, which made the game as a conclusion of 18 Winters. And the game will also include the Forgotten DLC, like Shadowverse DLC. That very looks like Resident Evil Mirrorverse, which was a PS2 exclusive in 2006 at the time. So the game received a positive reviews, making best-selling in 2021. Becomes of that, and yeah, people might remember during the pandemic days, and also the game was bestseller, the fans' favorite, like Lady Dimitrescu. So, who's becoming internet memes that make fun of the as a protagonist, though, like Ethan Winters, though. So Capcom also announced Resident Evil was developed after Resident Evil Villains. Then it was like announced that Resident Evil Requiem will be released on 27th of February this year. So guess what? Two protagonists will make comeback, and also one of them having newer characters like Leon S. Kennedy and Chris Ascroft. So yeah, Capcom could be repeat Resident Evil 7 and Phyllis for Requiem. I think my prediction could be great about Resident Evil. So before Requiem got released. So that's it in my storytelling about Resident Evil post-becoming era. I will waiting until Requiem to be released. So thank you for watching. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to your family and friends. So I'm Sisu Malana and see you in the next video, guys.